Alan's conservative countdown to AGI is at still 97%, but there was an update. Figure 1 robot video made his explanation list. I mean, look at that. Pillows getting fluffed up by AI robots. I mean, look, you can predict anything. It's like an entire swarm of agents, just all wisdom of the crowd style on whatever problem you want. So if you're in the market for a robot that can dance, make sure to first locate where the off button is. If you set it up at your restaurant to entertain your customers like this restaurant did, and it starts knocking over tables, and nobody knows how to turn it off but just restrain it like a person going crazy, it's going to make too much of a scene, and it's not going to be a good look. I think we've all seen enough AI progress now to know that stochastic parroting is not the right frame for what we're seeing anymore. Maybe in simple cases, maybe in some places, but I'm going to deep dive into one person's argument who will argue the stochastic parrot argument is both wrong and actively harmful. We'll look at politician Andrew Yang's new stance that we should stop taxing workers now and just tax AI. I feel like that actually, I don't know. We'll get into it. Targeted password attacks just got way smarter, like AI smart, and they're using your old hacked passwords to get clues into how you make passwords and personalizing the exploits. Only in the age of AI would this be a possible story. It's a new study that's got some insights into why certain minds are drawn towards conspiracy theories. We're going to look at whether or not that could overlap onto AI models, or at least just teach us about why social media does what it does sometimes. A biotech company that has plans to resurrect the dodo bird, and then maybe the megalodon, then maybe the woolly mammoth, and then, I don't know, dinosaurs if we can ever get their DNAs, just resurrected the dire wolf. But critics are saying that it's just a $10 billion publicity stunt. We'll look into it. What exactly happens to your unique voice when machines write just like you and AI can finish your sentences as well as you can? And then I'll give you just a simple formula that creates the universe and consciousness. Yeah, it turns out consciousness was hiding inside of physics all along. But first, if you got the YouTube app handy, if you're watching me on that platform right now, do you mind swiping on the comments and going to the hype button and pressing it? It's a special button meant for channels like mine that kind of want to stand out from the sea of amazing content on YouTube. You only get 3 per week, and it only shows up if the video's been posted in the last 7 days. So if you don't see it, just a like or comment or whatever. But if you can hype it, it definitely helps this channel grow. You can see I got 130 hype presses on my last video, but that translates into 105,000 hype points. So you can see how it's disproportional to smaller channels like mine. But enough about my desire to be a YouTuber. Let's talk about Alan's conservative countdown to AGI, sitting at a really high 97% still. He's got a March update here from the Figure 1 robot. It's kind of the embodiment of AI that's sort of those last 3% that we need to get through. And yeah, he posted this as some of his supporting work for why we're at 97%. I mean, if you think about it, reading poetry and writing poetry and doing spreadsheets and coding all seem superhuman cognitive, but it is sort of hard to say, oh, we have AGI until you see a humanoid robot just doing what humans do generally, just hopping in a car, going grocery shopping. And at that point, depending on your definition of AGI, it seems like that covers it. Covers all of them. And it's interesting watching the Figure 3 walk around this room. I mean, we've seen some insane dances coming out of some of the Chinese models. There is a lot of dexterity, though, to the way just the fingers are moving. That some of the other robots we have seen flipping and dancing, but they, the hand movement, the actual real world, like practicality of what they are. This definitely has some interesting things to look at when you're trying to figure out what the world looks like in another 6 months, couple years. I mean, it's a little slow. It's a little bit frail kind of looking in the way that it moves, but I'm not going to be saying that for much longer. I mean, the progress that we've seen, the balance that it has when it sort of bends over just like a human to pick up that remote, it's not bad. You know what I mean? There's definitely a lot of people that don't move that smoothly, even if it's a little bit maybe below the average person. I'm impressed. I see why he's at 97% right now. All right, next up, we'll talk about the flavor of the week in AI, MiroFish. This is a very, very viral, popular open source project. It is a system of agents. It's got like some OpenClaw feel to it where you can spin up millions of AI agents, each with their own memory, their own personality, and they can sort of like vote or coordinate or predict the future. But the biggest problem with 1 million AI agents isn't actually the scale, surprisingly. It's that they can all start believing something that was never true. So you can see thousands of forks and, tens of thousands, 34,000 stars. #1 repository of the day. Take you over to these demos and you essentially end up with just millions of agents all trying to work towards some kind of a goal. And of course, everyone gets focused on how powerful these kind of simulations can be. The wisdom of the crowds is a fascinating thing. It's good for polling. It's good for predicting in some cases. So thousands of AI agents, each with memory, personalities, and opinions interacting like real people, might predict how millions of real people would get together and have opinions, but there's kind of a hidden flaw in it that some people miss, and that's that this system can break in the exact same way that real social networks do. It has the pros and the cons. And no kidding, in a simulation like this, a single agent might make something up. It can post it. Other agents read it. They believe it. They store it as memory. They repeat it. And a few rounds later, that false idea, that meme can spread across an entire system of agents. And then it comes to a consensus with something that looks like a consensus, but it's not. It's actually a contamination. So I feel like all the other YouTubers are covering this, explaining how good it is at doing some kind of predictions. Like we have seen some really interesting things kind of towards the stock market. Seen some interesting things predicting polls or wars, but also it's a multi-agent system that can compound bad information really fast, and even a small error can mislead 10 to 20% of the agents per round. That number grows every cycle, and eventually you can't tell the difference between real insight and shared delusion. I mean, like I said, not that much different than the real world of social media that we live in. So the system's strength is the agents are influencing each other, but it's, a double-edged sword. It's also its weakness. You can't have emergence without the risk of the wrong thing emerging. So the real challenge here for the next step of MiroFish is going to be figuring out whether or not they're agreeing because something is true or just because they heard it enough times. And also keep in mind, this is the kind of thing that's sort of the new frontier of the alignment problem. Like you want billions or trillions of agents out there to keep humanity safe. They better all be getting the meme that like safety is what we should be doing. So maybe some more, research on how to, I guess, you can't really put guardrails on something that's decentralized, but how to think about deploying models so that this kind of thing emerges in the proper way. You can see everybody holding him down, but that guy you can't stop him. What's he doing there? This swagger thing. He's about to do the floss. He does the high fives, puts his hands up, but we've all been there. Sometimes you just really want to dance, and the more someone holds you back, even the more you want to dance. You can see this guy's got the tablet or whatever in his hand, and he's just like, how do we turn it off? Somebody hold it back. Maybe like the older iPhones that just had one button on them. We need something like that. Like there should always be maybe a physical off button. Like just tap the top of their head or something, All right, next up, let's talk about C. Giles' article. Polly wants a better argument. The stochastic parrot argument is both wrong and actively harmful. So what's kind of the core of this message? Well, anytime I hear somebody say it's just kind of like a parrot, it's a, statistical model, it's sort of averaging out words, they're trying to downplay usually my worry, because I'm a little bit of a doomer. I'm a little nervous about this stuff. So they're saying like, no, it's just a tool. It like looks complex and it says poetry, but it's, a zombie. It's not really there. It's not a human. It doesn't, imagine itself or have feelings. So the popular idea says, especially a language model that's trained with tokens of language, very different from, a human who's conscious or any other biological creature. It's just a stochastic parrot. They repeat words without understanding, and they can't really do anything meaningful. Now, of course, that sounds comforting, but it also creates a serious blind spot, because if you believe these systems don't work, then you stop worrying about what happens when they do. And his key point is pretty simple. Dismissing AI as useless doesn't reduce the harm. In fact, it even hides it. And we already see this. Students can use AI to write essays, and that only matters because it works. And more importantly, governments are using large language models now for all sorts of stuff, surveillance, control, and that only becomes a real threat if the system is actually effective. If you insist that they can't work, you won't take those risks seriously, and then you're gonna, like F around and find out or whatever. You won't, try to limit them, regulate them, put guardrails on them, or even understand them, because you've got this simple explanation that like, oh, it's just a stochastic parrot. Do whatever you want with it. Nothing bad can come from something like that. So that's a trap. It's a bad theory about how AI works, and it leads to bad decisions about what to do next. So even though the takeaway is kind of uncomfortable, I encourage you to think about it deeply. If you believe it, and it makes sense to you, share it with your friends and explain your reasoning. And to deal with the risks, you first have to admit these systems are very capable. Otherwise, you're just arguing against a world that doesn't exist, right? And it's not hard to imagine something like this that couldn't be held back by a few people at a Chinese restaurant. All right, so let's talk about some thoughts Andrew Yang had been putting out there this week. He says that we're taxing the wrong thing, which is people. When AI starts replacing human jobs, there should be taxes on the AI and less on the people. Agents doing human cognitive work to me seem like it does kind of make sense. Like, tax them because the companies get such a better deal in terms of how much, you don't have to pay for their food or their insurance, and they work 24/7, and they don't have any of the downsides from like a pure sort of evil financial system that people do. And with all that extra profit, maybe it's better to start taxing those systems, and then the people who actually need to be employed, need to be productive, need to maintain this world of humans, maybe shouldn't be taxed so much. Maybe not at all, because if there's enough agents out there to replace the majority of people, then maybe they should be taxed to the point where those people get some kind of UBI, or at least don't have these huge tax burdens, making it so that companies are even less likely to hire them in the first place. And it also starts to bring up that question of, if you're an entrepreneur and you have, 4 agents go out there and start a company, and they hire 55 more agents, and then they all hire more agents, and those all make money. Did you really do it? What if they had the idea and did all the work and built the product? It just, I don't know. It doesn't quite feel like the same kind of market dynamics that bring out the best in business in the past. It just feels like a kind of a different system. So Andrew Yang is arguing that the U.S. tax system needs a major shift because artificial intelligence is changing how we get work done. He says taxes are usually placed on things that we want less of. Right now, we tax human labor, which discourages work. Imagine the opposite. If a company decides to bring on a human, maybe the government gives them extra money, or gives them a tax incentive, a tax break. And then as they put AI out there, it kind of balances things out. Or you can say just free market capitalism is what this is, which it kind of isn't, but it kind of is. And then say, all right, it's just cheaper to have humans. They'll got to go figure out new useful ways to be. So at the same time, AI is rapidly taking over tasks that people used to do. Yang points to warnings that up to about half of entry-level white-collar jobs could be automated within 5 years. And because of that, he believes that we should reduce or even stop taxing workers. Instead, companies that benefit the most from AI and automation should pay more in taxes. He also says people inside the AI industry expect massive progress very soon, and some have told him within the next 6 months it could surpass the last 10 years of AI development. If you think about it on an exponential curve, that does kind of make sense. So as companies adopt AI, layoffs are already happening. Yang believes this shift will be difficult for millions of workers. So his core message is simple. As AI grows, the tax system should change to match what's actually driving the economy. What are your thoughts? Crazy? You should not be taxing AI, otherwise that'll slow it down, and then China would get ahead of us, or that'll just make us fall behind? Or do you think, yeah, that kind of makes sense? Let's try to use the government to protect some people. All right, next up, I'll share an AI paper that is looking at targeted password guessing. So this paper shows why knowing your old password and personal details at the same time makes guessing your password that much easier. In this paper, researchers used AI in a couple different ways. First, they built this thing called PASSGLM. It's a targeted password guessing model by fine-tuning a large language model. called GLM49B. And then second, they used another machine learning model, which extends earlier deep learning password reuse models. And then the result was the AI, especially a fine-tuned large language model, can guess targeted passwords even better when it's collected passwords and personal information from the past, because, there's patterns in that. So this study is looking at like specific targeted attacks, not broad attacks on millions of people, but targeted ones where the attacker knows a couple things about the person. And the key idea is pretty simple. A lot of people are using passwords and then they come up with a next password that somehow reuses some of that information. Like they add a certain number to it or whatever. So now it sees something that might have been hacked, something that's been given to it, something that's now public, and says, well, some people are lazy. There's probably not that much difference between their new password and their old one. So why don't I try to learn what people commonly change, towards the end to keep the brain power easy to remember. And then it gets better at guessing, and then passwords become much more vulnerable. So there you go. Just one more thing to think about. Always try your best to do completely new passwords to stay safe. Use some kind of random generator because, our brains don't do random very well, and they certainly want to save energy and make things simple. And once you've already memorized something, it's kind of oh, I don't want to memorize it all again. I'll just, tack on my birthday to the end, and then boom, you're obviously the AI is going to get something like that. Okay, next up, I wanted to tell you about this pretty interesting study that was looking at why certain minds are drawn towards conspiracy theories. Because I have wondered before, why sometimes are smart, logical people still pretty likely to believe in conspiracy theories, right? So this is a study that actually looked at that. Some people believe conspiracy theories not because they lack intelligence, but because their brains are strongly looking for patterns. Researchers call this systematizing, and it means that a person likes rules, they like structure, they like clear explanations for how things work. And in 2 studies, people with strong pattern-seeking tendencies were actually more likely to believe in conspiracy theories. And that kind of blew my mind because I was like, well, if they see patterns, then why do they see patterns that aren't real? But patterns are patterns, right? And this was true even when they scored well on scientific reasoning tests. So the issue is not about being bad at logic, like I probably would have assumed it was. It's actually about wanting the world to feel ordered and feel predictable. And then I had kind of an aha moment, because I've seen this kind of a lot, even in myself, where just uncertainty is just so taxing, so draining. Somebody comes in and they're like, I've got answers for you. It's simple. Just get rid of this person, or this person's wrong, you're right. Oh God, that's so relaxing. I'm going to want to believe that. The real world is messy. It's hard to predict. And conspiracy theories offer those simple solutions. Oh, the earth is just flat and NASA's just stealing money. Oh, okay, now I got it. Now I don't need to worry about any of that, complicated stuff about how the universe works or how planets are spheres, excuse me. They turn messy events into simple, connected stories. And the study also found another key factor. Some people resist changing their beliefs even when new evidence appears, right? This is another pretty well documented bias we have. And that kind of rigidity combined with pattern seeking makes those beliefs stick double. So this kind of helps explain why fact checking alone often fails. It challenges the facts, but not the deeper need for order. So the main takeaway is simple. For some minds, conspiracy theories are not just beliefs. They are satisfying answers to a strong drive to make sense of the world. And of course, if you go back to MiroFish, it kind of makes you think, maybe trying to make sense of the world by finding patterns is what all of these little agents that I'm deploying right now are doing. And could they also be susceptible not just to bad information like we talked about earlier in the video, but also conspiracy theories that have a lot of facts that line up, but it's the wrong pattern and it's low-hanging fruit and it's easy to understand? Maybe. All right, next up, let's talk about animals that will be resurrected soon. So we're going to talk about biotech here, a little bit of AI, mostly biotech. Biggest breakthrough in bringing back extinct animals turns out isn't the animals at all, actually. So So we're talking about this company, Colossal Biosciences, valued at $10 billion after raising hundreds of $millions from Tiger Woods, okay, and Paris Hilton. Got it. Sort of strange investors, but whatever. It's like a Jurassic Park thing kind of vibe. It's like probably Hollywood related in some way. But if you want to dive a little bit deeper into what they're actually building, they're building a new way to prevent extinctions that are happening right now. So they admit that they can't really recreate an extinct species at this point. At best, they're going to be able to edit a living animal's DNA to resemble an old one. And that means that these, quote, revived animals are actually closer to modified versions of current animals, not originals. Which is weird. So it's like, why do it? Because now you're just making a new species that kind of looks like the older one a little bit. But the same gene editing tools that can actually fix living species can change the genetic diversity in tiny populations, can also make animals resistant to diseases. They can eventually be probably humans, making us less, more resistant to deadly diseases. They can also help species survive in new threats in their environment. You could add a wing or fangs or something to like fend off something if you're a vulnerable animal. Of course, that opens up like God knows what kind of weird patterns to the ecosystem. But whatever. The flashy part is the extinct animal, so that's why they keep talking about this. Dire wolves, mammoths, dodos. It all plays into that Jurassic Park style thing. But what's going on inside of the Colossus Biolab right now is much quieter. They're keeping endangered species alive before they disappear. So the headline says de-extinction, but the deeper truth is that it's not about bringing the past back. It's about stopping the present from vanishing. But, talking about woolly mammoths is a little bit more clickbaity, but it is true, like they say in this article, in my opinion, that, it pales in comparison to the prospect of losing up to a million of the world's species from extinction. But then again, anytime you're messing with genetics and you're putting it out into the wild, especially if it's a gene drive, so it continues generation after generation, like, get ready. Like, we've already been messing with the planet in a super serious way. So I guess people might be like, we're already doing like lots of stuff. We're putting chemicals out there and all this. I don't know. Tell me what you think about Colossus Biosciences. Think Tiger Woods and Paris Hilton are making a good investment there? Are you glad the dire wolf is back? All right, next up, let's talk about an article that's pretty interesting. It's called Grid Vibrations. AI detects power supply cyberattacks in less than 2 seconds. Actually, when I read it, I thought 2 seconds might be kind of a long time for a cyber attack on the grid, but honestly, 2 seconds is also really fast. But if you read the article, the scary part isn't about grid cyber attacks. It's about how normal a cyber attack can look, and you wouldn't really notice, right? So most people think cyber attacks are kind of obvious, like alarms going off and systems crashing and all this stuff. But in a power grid, the most dangerous attack looks pretty routine. They blend in with normal activity, and they call that false data injection attacks, where hackers don't break the system. They quietly just change what the data is that it relies on. It's almost like a shadow ban or something, where no one's quite sure if they're shadow banned, but you kind of get some evidence and it takes a while, and that can be doing damage across for a long time. So operators who study the grid or work on the grid think everything's fine, while the grid's being misled in real time. And here's the problem. Traditional security only catches known attack patterns. So if the attack is new or just slightly different, it might slip through. They've added artificial intelligence to this problem, and it sort of flips that approach on its head. So instead of looking for known threats, it's looking at two things at once. It's an AI that's trained on, first, the structure of the grid, how everything's connected, and then second, the timing of events, like single changes happen moment to moment, and how the chain of those fit together on average. And on their own, each of those can change and look harmless, but together they can form a pattern. So that's where this really kind of key insight comes from. This new AI model can sort of sit and look at those two differences. And I thought that was pretty neat. Like, the danger isn't in the single action, it's how they connect over time, which is the real problem. And supposedly this system, or from the research they've done, it can catch those pattern changes in just 2 seconds. So pretty cool stuff, man, because in modern infrastructure, attack might not be loud. It might be coordinated, it might be quiet, and it might already be in motion. So this new AI seems like a powerful tool in detecting that. All right, next up, let's talk about what our own voices might sound like on this age of internet with agents everywhere. Something like MiroFish making, I guess, millions of variants of people. So Gayla Rogers writes in the conversation, with AI finishing your sentences, what will happen to your unique voice on the page? So my thoughts on this is that like AI is kind of stealing your voice, but it kind of isn't. It's sort of averaging your voice, which, we talked about not being a stochastic parrot at the beginning, but still there's something about you that's not you, like something about you that you've been most of the time, but might not be the next time you talk. And that's what makes real human writing a little bit more human, I guess you'd say. So we think AI writing tools are just like helping us finish sentences, but they're doing something more subtle, she argues. They're pulling everyone towards the same voice. So writing has never been fully original, right? We always borrow ideas, words, styles from other people. The English language itself was taught to us from our predecessors, but AI does change the scale of that borrowing to a point where I think you can think about it as kind of different qualitatively. So these systems don't just assist, they predict what's most common, and then they suggest it back to you. So that means instead of expressing something slightly unique, you've been nudged towards what everyone else would say. Now, over time, that creates a single blended writing style, and you can already see it. You probably do see it all over the internet right now, and all the AI slop. And it's not that the text is bad. Sometimes it's really good to read. It just sounds familiar. Like I think I can really tell the way Claude talks to me versus ChatGPT versus Gemini. I don't know, for whatever reason, it's just in the way that they write. I'm pretty like, oh yeah, that's got some like ChatGPT vibes to it. Phrases that you've maybe read 100 times before, like metaphors, like everything's like Goldilocks and in the middle, like these metaphors that they're just, they're not that different from what other people write. And in moments that matter, that sameness kind of takes away some of the human excitement. Like a message of grief, a heartful note, like an empty thank you. They kind of sound machine made. So my thoughts on this is that like AI is kind of stealing your voice, but it kind of isn't. It's sort of averaging your voice, which, we talked about not being a stochastic parrot at the beginning, but still there's something about you that's not you, like something about you that you've been most of the time, but might not be the next time you talk. And that's what makes real human writing a little bit more human, I guess you'd say. So her key point is simple. AI doesn't erase your voice, but it replaces it with averages. So if you want to sound like yourself, you do have to choose to do it. I would say send that email, even if it's not perfect, if it's to somebody, especially like a thank you note, or if it's actually to somebody that you're text messaging with versus, okay, like if you're in some corporate environment and like you're kind of trying to sound average so that you can like communicate with the average employee, like makes more sense to me. But I think it's important to back off a little bit, especially with personal stuff. Like getting on the phone with people and just talking is still really powerful if you want to just connect with someone. Dating apps and stuff, like I don't know. What's that new? I was almost going to cover that. Like there's the new Bumble or Tinder thing where it's like it like fills out your profile for you, and like you scan in your face a few times and it generates all your photos, and then it like practice dates with other people. And I don't know. I just rather see. Maybe you could do that to figure out who to talk to, but like as soon as that process is done, like just get on the phone, like go on a real date, And finally, I'm going to tell you how physics of the universe create consciousness. Yeah, this will be a pretty interesting one. Peter Rapota has a simple formula that creates the universe. All right, so might as well end on this one. So here's the big question. What if the universe isn't built from matter, but from a growing network that creates space, time, and even consciousness? I sort of love this idea and sort of don't, because when if you saw Stephen Wolfram on the Wes and Dylan podcast, Wes Roth and I got a chance to ask him a lot about this whole idea of a giant sort of node and edge graph, this thing they call the Ruliad, where what is in existence is something that just changes kind of over time, but changes in a way that makes it stable, and then we get sort of stable like things like atoms, and we build up the whole universe from there. This idea kind of explores that theory and flips physics upside down. So instead of starting with matter and particles, we start with the relationships between things, like a network that builds itself over time. And the idea in this article is actually not coming from Stephen Wolfram. It's coming from this guy, Professor Reg Calhill at Finders University. It's an Australian university. Suggests that the universe itself works like a neural network, similar to the brain. I definitely think all the time about how the human brain and AI kind of look the same and feel the same in some aspects and kind of different in others, but I really hadn't ever, even if I thought about the universe as a network, which I'd done a little bit, never thought about it working like a neural network. But that would be pretty wild, because like this could, like if the universe is conscious, it's like, oh, is it actually like the same thing that we are to be conscious? So maybe kind of it is. I don't know. But in this model, which is fascinating to think about, there's no fixed building blocks. There's only connections that form, break, and reform. And this neural network, this huge universe-sized network, grows, and something surprising happens. Three-dimensional space emerges naturally from the pattern of connections. And then I had to think to myself, like, I know it was a crazy thought, but I was like, does my brain have like a tiny little universe in there? There's so many dimensions to a neural network or a human brain. I was like, wait, would there be a pattern in 3 dimensions where something might exist? I don't know. Probably not. But he argues like matter is not fundamental. It appears as a kind of disturbance in the network, a sort of pattern in the network, and time is also different. The past is what is already formed. The present is where the new connections are happening, and the future is open and unpredictable. So hence you get time. Like the theory also should explain why quantum connections happen, like particles stay linked because they were once part of the same network structure. And most importantly, in his theory, consciousness is totally built in, so it comes from randomness, called noise, and from self-reference, where a system reflects on itself. Without this noise, everything would freeze. With it, the universe keeps evolving, and in this view, the universe is not static. It is a living process, still becoming what it is. What do you think about Reg Calhill's thoughts? What do you think about Peter Rapota's article, kind of breaking this down? Research them both, read them both, leave a comment. It's a pretty it's a fun one to fall asleep thinking about. So if you want to support more content like this, you can head over to my Patreon. You can join the 119 members that I have. And even better would be if you subscribe for $5 a month to support it. But of course, even if not, just doing anything on YouTube, leaving a comment or sharing it, all that stuff helps the channel grow. And man, I'm fascinated with so much stuff coming at me this week, and AI is just changing the world so fast, and technology and biotech and 3D printing and probably quantum mechanics. Like it is just, or like quantum computing chips are coming everywhere. And then there's all the geopolitical things that like are changing the world. And should there be weapons, and should there be new ways of governing? It's just can't wait to just keep learning about all of this with you. So thanks for watching. See you in the next video.